Hey everybody, welcome back to Data Dash. My name is Paul Sampson. Today is Wednesday, December 10th, 2025, and we've got some pretty sideways action here after a nice little impulse move off of at least Bitcoin and Ethereum yesterday. A couple of the altcoins got a little burst with it as well, and then pretty much just back to sideways consolidation. Generally, we see a lot of moves like this as we come into these big events like the FOMC Fed rate cut decision. Again, that's today, later this afternoon, around that 2 p.m. Eastern, I do believe. So in a few hours from the time of recording. And a lot of times the market just kind of is waiting with bated breath, right? So unlike things that come unexpectedly, big, massive news breakout or breaking news events, tweets from the president, right? Things that just kind of seem like they're sporadic. These events are interesting because we can see them coming a mile away, right? So everybody speculates really hard on, one way or the other. A move yesterday to the upside made people feel that there was some insider trading, right? And that people, we're looking to see that some may know something that others don't. But yeah, otherwise, just really a decent little regular move here. What I was looking for was a move off of our weekly pivot. All right. So we'll just kind of cover Bitcoin here. This is very local, right? So I'll kind of zoom out here, of course, in a minute, but just kind of break things down more short term. And if I have them on here, I might have deleted them already. But we had our weekly pivot, which is our average price that we look for, which is last week's average, this week's target. Okay, so you can see how we started off and we came down and smacked that right to the dollar. And then we were looking for a pushback up to 93,000, which was our additional weekly target up here. It was our point of control that we looked to as well, right? So just pull it up right here, which is right there. So it was around that 93,000. And we ended up even pushing up and doing something relatively bearish, actually. It's not actually the best look. We did the exact same thing last week in reverse. All right, so I'll take this off real quick. When we did this move right here, we were looking for that 85,200 at first. Right, we were trading up here, and I was like, all right, 85,200 is the key region. Why was that? This was the last week's low, all right? And context was key because we did not take the high first. Likely, if we come down, take the low, you run it back to the high, all right? So that was last week. And this week, we've done the exact opposite, and that's not a great look here locally, right? Not a death sentence either, but just something to be aware of because we are sitting on top of a big news catalyst. All right. So again, what did we do? We were trading in the middle of the range. We tag our weekly average here. We run it to the high. We took out last week's high. So now again, anybody that's gone short in this period of time, stop losses above all these highs right here, everybody gets taken out. The move happens really fast. So it gets people really excited. And just on a technical outlook, in theory, this is where we set up for what's called to take the high and we die. All right. So last week's low is all the way back down at 83.7. As long now as we're below here, you have to anticipate that that's a real possibility. And that's just with no news needed, nothing like that. Right. So if we were to get a move like that, I'm sure it'd be accompanied with some news. But currently, that's where we're set up for. What changes that is we got to get back above that. Simple as that right now. We're living above some key regions. Let's just take a look at some of our opens here. Weekly open, we're living above or below the daily open. So locally, not the best scene either. And then where's our monthly? Zoom out a little bit here. Yearly open is holding us down like an absolute boss. Turn that off real quick. That 93K is so crucial, folks. And we'll zoom out and look at a lot of this stuff too, right? So this is just really looking and breaking down some of the local price action here as we go into this, event today. That you got a line in the sand. It really comes down to getting above really this last high, 93,000 at least. We have yet to get above and stay above. Daily close again down below 93K. So we'll highlight what that signifies there. So yeah, just something to be aware of here, not something I'm overly aggressively looking to short at the moment, because again, we have some fireworks today. Things can easily change. All right. I point that out because I'm not the only trader in the world that's probably seeing this setup. So, many are probably coming in with some fresh shorts here or trying to short around here, stop loss right above the high. So we could very easily come up and take everybody out in that little sense. But while we're below here, again, just wanted to set off the beginning piece there that that's not the best look here locally. Zooming out here a bit. So to really just kind of kick it off with today's news or whatever the case is, like what I would be really looking for is the exact same thing we've been talking on for many weeks now, and it's 93,000. Like just getting back above that 93K. Why is it so crucial? We're going to zoom out here for our number one setup that took us down. All right, so we'll kind of take off this. This was just the timing. Many of you have heard me talk on this many times already, right? So we had this huge AB equals CD. Completion time was week of September 29th, exactly when we hit. I was targeting a little higher to 130, but very cautious basically ever since we got into this window. And major target one met right away, right? Pretty much came down, held it for a little bit, lost it, back test it. Major target two gets met. This is a weekly time frame, by the way. So within a week. And then after that, we lost that right there. And the aggressive level to get to is a full retrace to point C, which is our tariff lows. Okay. Now, everybody's leaning pretty heavy in the bear camps, especially anytime we get a pullback. So, is that like a crowded view? I think it is personally. So again, I still anticipate us to get a float here. It's just, we really need to see us get back above 93,000. So that's basically this secondary target of this, get back above this region, start floating back up. It's also our yearly open, right? So that is a crucial level for the year here. And then just looking across the board, you can see how this area in a whole has been major support, broke it, resistance, support, resist. Like it's the number one level of the year, basically, right? So really big to get back above. And while we're below it, you just have to anticipate that the downside levels are the more probable at this time. But again, that changes with a flip of 93K. All right. So that's the downside stuff. C point is my most notable level while we're below 93. But flipping 93K, I think, puts us in a really decent position to see a rally into whether or not it's the end of this year, the next 2 weeks, or we range around for the next 2 weeks. And we actually see that next as we begin Q1. Because after a huge move like this, and this has pretty much been all of Q4, right? So this is October, first week of October to now. We've just seen nothing but down. Let's take a look at this one as well, right? So this was the last time we saw that. January all the way to, pretty much January, February, March, a little bit of April here. But what did we get right after? That secondary quarter was a up quarter. All right. So a lot of times when we have this, we've got a whole down quarter right here. And the next one is up. Whether or not we come all the way up to new all-time highs is debatable, but either way, to see at least a green quarter is likely. Okay. So that's one thing I'm looking for here. Again, 93K kind of sets the pace for that. And we're really hitting our head on it. So it's not that we're not consolidating under and we can't get through it. It's just that's all we need to see. That's the easiest and simplest thing to see here. Right. We're going to go ahead and just I have it on here already. Let's see. So you can see it right there. Really, it's 93, like 371. I would say that's the exact level we need to get back above. And look how it's just holding it down on a daily time frame. Just hit our head, hit our head, hit our head, hit our head. But at the same time, we are consolidating under this. And the more times we come at this region, it's likely we actually flip it. So it's just a little time to be cautious, of course. But to me also, I look around and when we see the markets in extreme fear and again, we discussed this time and time again that for the crypto market, it does make a little sense because how we've seen price action in the past, right? So everybody's looking at this as the 4-year cycle. It topped so far right at the exact 4-year cycle point, which to be fair, was the exact time frame of this setup that I was looking for. It was also the major AB equals CD all the way back from 2018. All right, where we were trading at like 3,000. That was also a completion zone in that region as well. So it's not to be completely discredited that, that could be a very, a valid high. I'm pretty neutral here. I lean actually more in the sense of at least seeing a rise back up. I think that The other piece of that as well is that if we do that, I think everybody's also going to be in the same camp at that point too, right? Looking for probably a gold pocket around that 110. So yeah, as timing kind of closes off here for the year, just going to be, I'm excited to see what the new information is, because again, I look at a lot of range data based on time frames, based on volume, high time frame averages, and every quarter, every 6 months, every year, we get some really big ones there. So personally, I do see a world where we actually push up from here, do make new all-time highs. 2026 is a beast, all right, in the sense of upside. And all that to me really stems from Ethereum. Okay, so let's kind of take a peek at ETH. It stems from Ethereum. I used to say this in the past, that Ethereum was like my major indicator of the market, right? And even though I know that many will look at ETH and say it's underperformed Bitcoin this last few years, very true. But to me, as long as I've been in Ethereum's actually outperformed Bitcoin since the window of time I've been involved, right? So since 2017, since 2018, right? We've seen ETH at like $86 to $4,900. And even currently, it's still sitting at around a 40x, where Bitcoin from those same lows, $3,000 back in that time frame, has seen a 30x, right? Or whatever the case is to the high. So either way, I mean, they still, to me, have performed relatively well to both of them, all right, just in different times now, as far as like these last few years go. And also, ETH did not crash as hard as Bitcoin did back in 2022, right? This little move right here. What do we see here overall? Like only a 50% pullback to 2022. I'm sorry, that's 2024. My bad. I was gonna say it was definitely deeper than that. 82, maybe it did crash just as bad. I take that back. Either way, the two of them have performed relatively similar, in my opinion, overall. Just very recently, it seems like, it has not, right? Obviously, we haven't made a new all-time high. Bitcoin has, and doubled it just about. But to me, ETH has been setting up for a really nice move here. I've got this little bullish harmonic setup here that I've been talking on for a few weeks, where we actually, we actually had the same exact setup now for both Ethereum upgrades. So the last upgrade was Pectra in May, where we had this, small little burst here. And then right as soon as that update happened, we had this move up. However, just that news alone, I don't think was what moved this market. I'm always looking for what the setup at hand is at the time. And then also the news is obviously there too. And for me, I actually got into brand new positions right here at the low. I know many people will say like, oh, there's no way, whatever. But we were actually looking for the exact same scenario down here. And at the time, I was calling it the stairs down, right? Stairs down and elevator up type of scenario, because we had just that, right? We had these stare down setup all the way down. Bullish harmonic completes right here. We ended up actually coming down for a really big move that was like a 2-year move there. But regardless, we took out Q3 low from the 2023, like blah, 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 all these things, everything's set up there. So the setup was there. And this was really before I even knew what this was. I kind of came across that update a little bit later, and I was just trying to piecemeal it all together to see if it aligned. And lo and behold, we were looking for that target area as number 1. This one is number 2. The aggressive target was actually all the way up to C point. And then from there, we actually continued up. So these things aren't like end all be all targets where it's like, oh, the price is just going to collapse from there. But what this does is it allows me to target these levels all the way back from there when everybody else is really, really afraid, right? So it's just, does it always play out? No, but that's just how I look for things, okay? So as we were coming down into this region here, we had literally the same exact setup, stairs down, right? Looks like I saw that we had that new Fusaka update, which just went live a couple days ago, whatever. But again, I don't just put together the fundamental side of things, because we've seen many, many times where something could have all these great partnerships and all these great news catalysts, and the price action doesn't reflect that. So when I'm looking at this, I'm literally seeing these same exact wicks almost, and I'm like, there's another harmonic at play here, isn't there? And sure enough, there was. And we had a completion zone right into this region, which was our gold pocket from this overall low up to that overall high, right? You can see that gold pocket region right there, comes in, tags it really perfectly. And from here, we're just in the midst of this next move on ETH. Okay. So floating up now. I mean, we could probably call this area met. What did we come up to? Like 3,300 last night, 3,381. It's not about being exact. If, I had some short-term positions from these regions here. I've taken out a good chunk of them even before this move up, just to protect it, in case we actually came back down and swept that low. This is an area I definitely look to consider taking a little profit in the short-term outlook, just because this is a region where we could, see another pullback before continuing up, just like we've seen a couple times already. And then overall, looking for this to run it back towards about that 4K level. All right. Now, it's a pretty big jaunt for Ethereum. It's already up about 30% from those lows. And to push up for that, it'd be like another 50% move overall from the low to the high. And for that to be the case, I'm sure we'd have to see that's about 17% from here. We probably see Bitcoin, picking up the pace a little bit too. So that's ideal. And then we'd see more than likely the rest of the market come up with it. Yeah. Okay, let's see here. Bull Runner, how you doing, my friend? Finally got a YouTube alert on time. Lately, the algos haven't been hitting. Yeah, sometimes they don't, my friend. All right. Take a look at some of these other ones you guys are looking for here. All right. How do you guys see today's FOMC meeting going as far as for the market? Do we see it going bullish or bearish? Drop me a bull or a bear down low in the comments if you guys think we're going to see. What do you think we're going to see today out of that, or a nothing burger, right? So sometimes these events really do end up being nothing. And again, when we see them coming a mile away, it's like the most everybody's talking about it. It's like all these things. Bitcoin's hitting its head right now on some major resistance. Again, not a death sentence, but it's just that we're coming to that window of time where we've just been ranging around and flipping that. It could align well with today's news, right? But it's just what I'm looking for simply. It's just that 93K, otherwise being below here. We just look for, another pullback essentially. But when we flip over to the stock market as well, here's the craziest thing, right? You got S&P, NASDAQ, Dow, like all floating into all-time highs, while fear is at all-time highs as well. And that's just really, for in my opinion, it's just like, that's probably one of the craziest things. And again, it all comes down, and to me, it is that, like, I think that everybody's just extremely afraid of everything crashing. And you see it a lot. Like, I mean, there's a lot of this AI bubble pop. There's a lot of content on it, and that are getting a lot of views, like millions of views. And personally, too, I mean, up until now, and not up until now, like it's changing, but my big target area for the next sizable correction in this market, in all markets, has been, destined to be 2026 to 2029, right? And I don't just say that now. That's been my overall thesis for many years. That's what's kept me relatively bullish in a lot of the really skeptical timeframes, like COVID, right? So that to me was a very much anticipated move. Not actually what happened, of course, but the drops and the drawdowns and the mid-cycle slowdown basically happened right on time, exactly 20 years after 9/11. Like, it's just, and before that was 20 years before that, and 20 years before that. And we just always get those mid-cycle pieces where everybody gets very skeptical. It ushers in high inflation and high interest rates. Everybody expects the market to crash. And then we get this last little face melting rally for a few years. And the last time we did that was 2001 to 2008. All right. This time around, 2020 was our last little mid-cycle cool down. And in theory, this window of time, this end of this decade, 2026, 2029, again, that's a wide region, a wide range of time. Could be 2030, could be 32, whatever the case is. We're also seeing a convergence of 50-year cycles, 80-year cycles, 100-year cycles. The Great Depression's 100-year cyclical anniversary comes in 2029. There's just so much data points that all align in these next few years. And I mean, what we're seeing going on around us too, with AI and job losses and all this stuff, it makes sense. And I think that a lot of people are really, trying to predict these highs. And again, while I have seen, or not seen, but while I've foreshadowed that these next years would be where something like that occurs, but also the more important part is that I was using that information to myself to kind of remain bullish on the way up, right? So I'm not looking to call a top or whatever the case is. I just, for me personally, it's like a time where I'm not really deploying any new capital, but I've already been investing in these markets, beforehand, just really on like a little defense here, but also not ignorant to the fact that I think that the markets could actually still go higher, especially while everybody's in extreme fear right here. And very much trying to collect on the next 2008 crash, right? There's a lot of people that are in the market, but there's also a lot of people that are in cash, that are just waiting for the next market crash, that are, waiting for the housing market to crash, which they've been waiting since 2020, right? So I don't know. It's just, with all that being said, without getting too predicty, because that's not what I'm trying to do by any means, it just leads me to believe that we're going to see higher prices in 2026. And that does include Bitcoin, right? So I know that many are looking to it as the 4-year cycle is done and all this and all that. And to me, I still look to this as we're putting in the first 20-year cycle with crypto, right? Alongside the housing market. The birth time of Bitcoin was 2009, which came out right after the last, 20-year cycle, essentially, right? Of the housing market, business cycle, however you want to look at it, right? Economic cycle. And yeah, we're seeing a pretty big convergence there. Now, the question is going to be, is Bitcoin going to be the gold of this time? Which gold I always highlight had received its ETF in 2004. All right. That was 4 years before, or 3 years before, really, give or take, the overall top in the markets. And then gold was the only thing back in 2008 to 2012 that held its value and actually doubled its market cap during that time. Now, Bitcoin, fast forward 20 years later, when did Bitcoin get that ETF? 2024, right? Exactly 20 years later from gold. And if that's in theory, if we're looking at a 20-year cycle here with a possible high to come in around 2027, 2028, and if we see the next, big crash here, Bitcoin's current market cap is exactly what gold's market cap was in 2004. And I'm just curious to know if that's going to be one that, holds its value, maybe even doubles its market cap in a time of a market crash and all that. Again, don't know what the future holds there. That's just something I'm, keeping in mind for potential diversity and hedging to some degree. Wouldn't be everything I put in, but will be an interesting piece. And it's an interesting feat to see that comparison, right? I think that's the only thing in the world that we can compare Bitcoin to is gold. But you have to break it down in that sense, right? We're talking about $100,000 asset, but the market cap is only like 2 trillion. And I say only, I mean, that's a huge number, but yeah, exactly 20 years later after gold gets an ETF, exactly the same market cap as we're potentially rolling up on a market crash. The market crash thing too is like, everybody's expecting it now. So now that we're here, again, I look at things, or I've been looking at it from a wide lens as well. But now that we're here, I just wonder how that's really going to end up playing out, because when everybody's expecting one thing, we all know how that's going to happen. So yeah, will be fun. Paul, in your opinion, do you feel that life-changing gains have passed in crypto? Just seems different now that big Wall Street players are in the game now. I definitely, yeah. I mean, I think that what we've seen in the past, it's just the same as anything in ever, right? Because in crypto, we've seen these massive, I mean, and don't get me wrong, Bitcoin's had a nice run here. Of course, nobody cares about that because the majority of people are into altcoins, right? Because the big wigs and the Wall Streeters and everybody basically slowly talked us out of holding Bitcoin so that they could, essentially scoop it all up. And also in that case, it's like we had these huge rallies in the past where Bitcoin saw these moves, but then the altcoins saw hundreds of X's and all this. And, everybody flocked to those because it was thought that you could get better ROIs on there, which you could, right? The thing that changed, it's not just the Wall Street, institutions and all that. It's the fact that we only had 2,000 coins in crypto in 2017 when I began here. Let me see if I can zoom out to that. I mean, it's back here. This chart doesn't have all the information. Sorry. The problem is we had 2,000 coins in 2017, and it was, at the high with Bitcoin being $20,000. We had billion in the whole market. So less than 1 trillion made up that market, but there wasn't a lot of options to go into. So that money had, less options to go into. So it was allowing for the bigger, moves. Also, just like anything in of value, if you're getting in from absolute zero, you have 100x potential. But once you get to 100x levels, you have to, you can only double that to get to the next, level of that, right? So it's like there's not enough room. There's not enough. Sometimes there's, the money and how it comes in and everything like that. It's just it starts to shift when market caps get larger. Bitcoin going from 3,000 to 20,000 back in 2017. That was a 20x or whatever that, almost a 8x or whatever it was. And I take that back. So the $3,000 was the low. Sorry. So it was like $600 beginning of the year, I believe, in 2017, and it went up to 20K. It's a huge move in RO, in multiples. But then even look at that, like from that 20K even to now, is like a 5x, because of course, like you can't just $50 trillion isn't just going to pile into this. But when you're getting in at the early stages, obviously the most risk is there. It's the most speculative. And trust me when I say, I've been in this market for that whole time period. And along the way, it was not easy for people to even trust Bitcoin, right? Everybody thought it was literally a scam, and, you'd get laughed out of the room if you even really talked about it, aside from the few times it did well, right? But otherwise it was always a scam and everything like that. So now that we have millions of coins, it's just printing out of thin air and all this. There's just not enough. There's not enough capital to flow around into there. There is in the world if everybody just dumped into it. But yeah, the days of like throwing a dart and getting lucky, I think that they are gone, in the sense of like catching 10 and 20 and 50 X's, but there still are winners. Zcash, for example, just had that like 20x move, kind of came out of nowhere, right? So, there's still winners here. Pretty much gave it all right back, per usual, in the parabolic moves. You had like CRO, which was one that I was looking for to make a pretty decent one. I'm just thinking of recent ones. Obviously, we had XRP even last year, went like 800% in just a month or two. HBAR went 700% in a few weeks. And there's other ones, right? There's definitely some other winners, but the overall market, yeah, like the idea, like to see things just like as a unit go up, I don't know, right? And that's just the hard part. So for me, I've really, vested a lot into ETH as more of a safer haven. I know that doesn't have like the potential to like 100x at this point anymore, right? As some of these other ones were. So it's just one of those things that, like anything, you just want to, kind of manage your risk appropriately. Like if you're going to be taking a chance on something that has way higher potential, but it's like only because of the size, nothing else. Like it might have a cool team and it might have whatever, and it might catch momentum because it's like a narrative, like RWA or AI or whatever. But at this stage, even before, like you kind of have to put in lower or less capital into some of those higher risk plays. And then if it turns out, that's awesome. But everybody always looks at it like, oh, I should have put, way more into this, but that's really not the best risk management to me, right? I look for things like I put a major stake of my portfolio in things that are somewhat likely to be around in the next few years, which I think Bitcoin and ETH are truly the only two that I could, really see. Anything else is, to me, is like anything with an ETF, I think is maybe the only other thing that would survive a complete wash, right? If we ever get that day when I don't even know what will happen, right? But whatever it is, whether it's regulation, whether it's an exchange going down, whether it's whatever, at some point we're probably going to wash out these altcoins to where like all of them go to zero, FTX style thing, right? I think that the only ones that survive are going to be the ones that have ETFs, and that's even a slight risk, right? So yeah, to answer that question, it's a tough one. I think that for me, for ETH versus BTC, that's usually a major indicator, at least in the past, right? And that's the thing that we've come to realize in this most recent bull run, is that things aren't looking like they have in the past. ETH had this huge setup here that I've been clocking since, basically 2023. But regardless, I've been anticipating ETH to outperform Bitcoin, which usually this chart alone would, indicate altcoin season. And truthfully, like all these little bursts here, we've had some pretty decent moves in the alts. And then, of course, this last one here, which was from April to August, it was almost like more just ETH. People would call it like ETH season, but this was a really big move, and this is of course measuring against Bitcoin. But this was when ETH was 1,400, and it went up to, this was that stairs down, elevator up setup, and it went up to 4,900. Got a little pullback here, but overall, this setup to me, which has taken 6 years to complete. And then based on timing, it should take about 1.5 to 3 years to get to the major conservative target. So again, this is not an end all be all type of thing, but this is the target area that I'm looking for during this time frame. And that's where I get these, times of December into February of 2027. And let's clean this up a little bit. And in theory, this, to me, when we were trading down here, this was, again, the beginning of this year. We were coming into it, and, the end of last year even, we got a nice little burst around right here, that November timeframe, which we all remember. It was just a few weeks. That was actually when XRP took off. But yeah, we haven't really seen the overall altcoin market really take off. And that aside, I still foresee ETH moving higher here. And then again into next year, which goes against everybody's, 4-year cycle theory. I think, again, the 4-year cycle theory, I'm not an expert on it at this point. I know that the base case for it, but I would say that that's been pretty broken ever since we, started this last little few years. We've seen things that it's been different the whole time around. I think it's just a really decent little buzzword that people toss around, but regardless, even if it is the case or not, I'm just looking at the price action and just kind of, going with it as much as I can. And so far, nothing has changed for me to anticipate that ETH is going to see outperform Bitcoin here going into this time frame. And as long as Bitcoin can hold really that tariff low, or to me, I look at it as the big worry level to me personally is probably going to be that 2021 high at 69K. So if we were to come back and start losing that, it really wouldn't be great. Again, nothing's a death sentence in the market. Things can lose certain regions, reclaim them, whatever. And you get new information and you really have to be able to adapt to it. Okay. So for here, as long as we're living above this region, I think there's nothing wrong with Bitcoin, continuing up from this area. And especially if we do it into the next year, I think that would go catch a lot of people off sides. I think that a lot of people would be really off sides if the altcoins took off next year as well. But yeah, again, it's not something I'm like saying, go out, rush out today and put everything you have into altcoins or whatever. But I'm sure the most questions about that is coming from people that are just already invested, right? So, which makes sense. Dominance is a big player of this too. High time frame here, folks, weekly. All right. And pair that with the ETH BTC piece, again, just looking for this to come down now. We've seen a nice stairs up. Might get the elevator down here soon enough. But either way, which we pretty much got right here, right? Just technically speaking here, range rotation, back into the range, back tested the high. So far, we've closed many, many weeks back in here. So as long as we're trading on the Bitcoin dominance below 62%, it is likely that we come down towards the midpoint of this range, the gold pocket area, and then realistically to seek out the point of control, which is all the way back down to 42%. Time frame to mosey on down to that area is probably going to be a year, right? So even if you look down here, right, and I'm just slowly cruising down, and if you look at the bottom, that puts us around that October, November, December 2026. Lines up pretty much with my December 2026 area here. Again, if this chart's going up and we got dominance heading down, right? That's generally good for the altcoins, right? And it just, a lot of things align with that 2026. Yeah, everyone expects a bear market, which makes me feel like it'll be different. I agree. I, I'm usually a contrarian view. There are definitely times when I think that the contrarian view is sometimes a little early, right? So it's not to say that and a good point is just even with myself highlighting that this region was where we were likely to see the next sizable correction in Bitcoin. I found it hard to believe that on this exact day that we were going to top off. And the reason being, granted, there was a setup. It was the perfect setup. We swept the previous week high. That AB equals CD was valid all the way since here. And while I was anticipating that rollover in a few weeks, um, the reason I didn't love the idea at the time, as far as sentiment would go, is because everybody really started coming out with it was like a Reddit post, for like October 6th was going to be the high, like, and everybody was really freaking out about that. And to me, I just felt like we'd get one last little push up to like 130 ish. Again, you're talking pennies, right? To 3%, nothing crazy. But when we did start to get those corrections, it wasn't a surprise to me because, like I said, it was very, very likely that we were going to be putting in that high on the week of September 29th. So, but yeah, the way that this, and again, I've been investing and trading this market since 2017, and I don't think I've ever, the only time I've ever seen the majority of people so sure that the bear market was here, that we were going to see just drastic low prices and all that. The only time that I ever saw that happen was right here. Okay, for that period of time, which was what, May to August. So May, June, July, August, about a few months there. And then on the flip side, we get to this point, and of course, everybody's really bullish at that level. So like I don't look back to previous price action and like try to see mimics and stuff like that. But that is a really interesting sentiment piece because in today's market, I mean, ever since even, we got to this region, I mean, everybody's been very much, and I say everybody, the term everyone is loose, of course, right? There's no way to truly scale, the whole market and see what the real sentiment is. But, those fear and greed index algorithms, I don't know how they really measure it, but I'm sure they scan across social media or something. But yeah, when you see the average and you just hear about it, like I look around and I see a lot of people just like very confirmingly talking like, all right, the bear market is here. It's going to be a little rough. We're going to have a dead cat bounce probably, but then we're just going to roll over for a year, come back in October 2026 and you'll be gravy. It's just weird chatter to me. It's just like weird. It's weird. What do you want to call it? Like cockiness, that just, again, they could be right, I guess. But it's just weird. The only other time I've ever seen it is right here, where it felt like a 50-50 split, to be fair, where people were like bear market, bull market, whatever. But the abundance of like bear market talk was heavy here. And I feel like it's kind of where we are now. It's like a 50-50 split. There's some people that are overly bullish or even cautionary bullish. And then there's a lot of people that are like confirming or like trying to be, I don't know the best way to say it, but I hope you get what I'm saying. On top of that, like to look around, is there any reason to see higher prices? And for me, I think there is. And I think that Ethereum's holding the key. Again, I think that this is the one. I think that this is the chart. And I could make a case for Bitcoin to go higher. I just needed to get above 93K and hold above 74, really. Like, so, we're like in that weird limbo area. But ETH right here, I think to me is the key that I think that pushes us into 2026. I don't know the fact if altcoins can see a huge rally or not. I think that many are really counting them out. I have been for a while, so it wouldn't be surprising. A lot of them are at lows, right? Sorry, I got something on my screen. A lot of them are at lows that we haven't seen. I mean, some of them are at all-time lows, right? So are they going to come back is the question. Are there going to be, just the new coins and projects that come from it is the question. I guess the last piece I'll leave us on here too is this one. someone had mentioned earlier, right, is the days of, aggressive, what they say, like it was something like, are the days of massive gains, life-changing gains, that's what it was, on altcoins or on cryptos over because institutions are here. I don't think that's truly the case. I just, we just got to be picky about entries. The entry is everything. And on top of that, the allocations, right? So you also, if you're going to pick something that's basically a penny stock, something like an Avalanche or whatever. And I don't say that in the sense of like those companies aren't anything, but in the grand scheme of things, what are they? What is Cardano? What is these, are these things that could literally go to zero tomorrow because of whatever, if the company shuts down or the case, something on that line. Is this something that can go to zero, or is this something that's like very unlikely to, like Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin and Ethereum. I'd say even Solana probably has some pretty deep roots now, XRP as well. And Cardano maybe as well. That's a bad example, but I hope you know what I'm saying. Like, right. It's the altcoins that outside of the top 10, let's just put it that way. So in this chart here, this is actually looking at all those altcoins that are outside the top 10. The plays that are going to offer up the more percentage gains if they do see some upside, but they're also the ones that can very much go to zero, right? And when you look at this, got a couple of levels, one of which the main one being this point right here, this 7.9%. I'm really wanting to see this get back above this for any type of major upside. You see I have a date up here as well. And if you'll note, that date is very, very similar to our Ethereum BTC target area, to the Bitcoin dominance target area, right? That basically like 2026, right? The mid to end point of 2026, maybe the beginning of 2027. But the thing I want to point out here is that look at this move from 2019 to 2021. That was the last notable altcoin rally where we saw, things like 50x and 100x, right? Somebody was mentioning those life-changing gains type of thing. Look at where we literally are at the exact bottom, or we came down to it during that liquidation, day back a few weeks ago in October. So we're literally all the way back to like 2019 levels in the altcoins here, which that's a big piece of the pain that's going around, right? So, but the setup at hand, again, you're at the lows. Are these things dead? Are they going to revive? That is the question here. We don't know that for a fact. But if you're looking for a period or a place to look to potentially put on risk, it's just, again, I'm looking at Bitcoin. I got to look at ETH. Like we have to see some strength come out of that. But if dominance the others' dominance here can get back above this 7.8 region, there's a potential harmonic that takes us up into these areas, and it would do so around this time frame if it was perfect. Again, nothing's perfect, so it's also a total what if right now. So it's not something I'm, again, I can't I'm not overly married to it. Can't say, I'm putting all these, all my eggs into that basket. But I like to look for things while we're at lows, because of course, why would you want to be looking for things when we're up in these levels, right? And everybody wants to jump in when things are already up 100%, 200%. So there's definitely fear here, and there's also risk. And that to me is what opens this opportunity the most. And if we get back above that 7.8, is it 7.8% on this chart, I think that we have a hell of a run loading. And the last time we saw that was this one right here. And again, we have a ton more coins now, and not everything's probably going to see the same result. Even back then, I will point this out, even in 2021, we did not see the same type of results like we saw in 2017. Okay. That 2017 rally was like the first one I was really, a part of. And that we saw my gateway drug into this world was Litecoin. All right. Only because it was the cheapest one at the time. I got into Coinbase January 2017. Bitcoin was like $600. Litecoin was $3. Ethereum, I think, was like 26. I chose Litecoin because you got the most bang for your buck, right? But a decent amount into it, it ended up going from $3 to $300 during this time right here. So it 100x effectively. I didn't do anything with it till the very end of the year. Smart, right? I then took everything out, that 100x, and I dumped it into XRP, Tron, and a couple of random coins back in the day, Linda coins, Sys, and stuff like that, right? Only a few people probably even know about those. But XRP and Tron were the two I dumped the most into, and the two of them went bananas in like 1 month, right? So after a huge year run up of everything at 100xing, I was able to even take some of that, put it into something else, and we saw another 100x in a month. And it was not only them; it was pretty much everything, like 10x, 5x. Like it was the craziest thing, right? Again, there was very little amount of coins with the amount of money in the market. Fast forward to 2021, and we did not see that same setup. We already saw like a dilution here. We went from 2,000 coins to 20,000 coins, and you already saw like not the same results where we saw maybe a 2-3x or a few big gainers. I think actually Cardano, speaking of Cardano, was like the one or maybe the second 100x coin of that run that was a notable project, not like just a total safe moon or something like that. But not everything else saw billion-dollar valuations and all that, which is something that we used to look for back here, right? You could almost assume that every coin would get to like a billion-dollar valuation at least for a second, and then it would just kind of roll over. So if you took that same mentality and you looked at things the same way over here, there was potential. Things did rally pretty nicely. Some of them, you had some big winners that went like 50x in a short period of time. Polygon Matic back then was one of them. Solana was one that went from $1 to $240. Some of the back here, the gaming, right? Metaverse was big. We had ICOs, gaming, and metaverse. All right, and now we've got just nothing so far. What it feels like. And then the NFTs too. The NFTs really took off back in that window. But 2,000, 20,000, all right, not everything took off. And then now if we even get this push in this time, and again, it's a big what if. There's so many things that would have to happen here. But if we do, it's going to be a similar situation, I have to imagine, right? Where not everything is going to catch the bid the same way that we saw last time and the time before that. We already saw a diminish here. We went 2,000 coins, 20,000 coins. Now we have like 2 million coins. All right. That's like what, 100x from that, something like that. That's a big dilution in the market, right? There's still going to be those winners. I'm sure it's going to be AI driven pieces, RWAs, whatever the catchy narrative is, some of those Ondo and Sui and some of these projects here, Aerodrome, whatever, right? Like I'm just spitting out for examples. There may be another, Solana meme coin rally or something like that occurs too, right? Where you get some of those smaller micro caps or the AI agents come back or something similar to that. All that happens if we flip that 7.8, and that's when we start looking at things that are not the top 10. All right, so that's what I'm looking for here. There's no sign of it so far. I will, completely say that again. It's not like I'm married to that setup where we have a potential harmonic that takes us up to that region. But where that starts to materialize a little bit is just flipping that 7.8. We came so close recently, and that's just a really good example of just waiting for some confirmation. And we were pushing, and we were so close, and we rolled back over again. So yeah, that's what I'd be looking for. Again, everything hinges on Bitcoin here. Big picture there. We have some news coming out today. Obviously, that's I think more of a short-term thing more than anything as far as if anything happens. Let's take a look at what Bitcoin's doing. Pretty much just kind of hanging out still. So yeah, we want to see 93 get flipped, and ideally on a daily time frame. So tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern or whatever the case is, we get back above 93K anytime soon. Wait till that 7 o'clock hits. We get a daily close above, and that's where things start to look a little different. All right, that's the upside line in the sand for us. And you can see clear as day how this has been, right? Daily wick, daily candle close below. We're below, we're below, we're below, we're below, we're below, we're below, we're below again. Flip that though, and we got some upside, folks. And I truly think that that's something that takes us probably into next year. I don't think it's going to be a huge, quick, new all-time high right off the rip, or even a run back up to 110 right off the rip. But in the next few weeks, I think we slowly kind of can float up there. 93K though has to get above that. All right, folks, I am at my time limit here. So I hope you all enjoyed this. I know I sure did. Be sure to tune in again next Wednesday. We'll see how things play out after the meeting today. And then I have a video going out tomorrow morning. We'll kind of see what the market does, right? So be sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Hope you all have an amazing day wherever you are in this beautiful world. I'll see you all in the next video. And until then, everybody, cheers.